We were worried about nothing. The Dodgers know how to do bullpen games. They got it done, and it was fun. Let's talk about it. Let's get locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. This is a daily podcast covering the World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue. You can find us wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. All you got to do is search for Locked On Dodgers. You can become an everydayer by listening and watching every day. And you can make that easier on yourself by subscribing and get notified when episodes are ready or when we're going live on YouTube like we are here right now. Usually it's Jeff Snyder and myself, but today, just me. We've been Dodger fans for our whole lives. We've been covering the Dodgers for over 10 years, and we've been doing this podcast since 2019. We're going to talk about Andy Potheads. We're going to talk about Mookie Betts. We're going to talk about Matt Sauer, and we're going to talk about what ended up being a perfect bullpen game for the Dodgers right now because it was a 15-2 win. The Dodgers just did use 3 real pitchers and Kike Hernandez, and it was about as perfect as you could be. They've been in a crunch. Sunday, they didn't have Tyler Glasnow, and they had to cover 8 innings. On Monday, they had to cover a few more innings and went into extra innings. And Wednesday, they have Tony Gonsolin going for the first time in a long time, so you don't know what to expect. So we were wondering where the innings were going to come from. We might have briefly mentioned Matt Sauer's name as a possibility. He's not a direct starter, so maybe that's why he wasn't necessarily fully on our radar. But he gave the Dodgers more than enough. He gave them 5 innings. And if you're going to build out a bullpen game, yeah, you're only going to use 3 pitchers. And you're going to be led by your offense, and that's exactly what happened here. The offense put up runs early. They chased Sandy Alcantara early in the game, and it just was going from there. It was one of those nights where everything was going right for the Dodgers, unless your name was Michael Conforto and Max Muncy. But Shohei leads off with the home run. Mookie has a couple hits, couple RBIs. Freddie has a couple hits. Teoscar has 4 hits and 4 RBI. Will Smith has a couple hits, couple RBI. Tommy Edman has a hit and 3 RBI. Andy Potheads 3 more hits with a couple RBI. Unfortunately, Muncy and Conforto were 0-for, but this is what the Dodgers can do when things are going right. This is what the Dodgers can do when they need to summon it. And this is, it's not as easy as, hey, we really need this because we are in a tight stretch with our bullpen. And, we were a little bit concerned of where those innings were going to come from. I'm sure the Dodgers, Mark Pryor and Dave Roberts and all them were worried about where these innings were going to come from. But, the offense said, hey, step aside. We'll take care of this. We'll give you guys a big lead. We'll allow those relievers to throw strikes and pump the strike zone. And, the Marlins aren't a great offensive team. And, this is the result of that. Jack Dreyer ended up getting the start, which is kind of what we expected just because he hadn't pitched the last 2 days. And, he gave the Dodgers – he did give up a run, aided by Teoscar Hernandez, still struggling out there in right field, turning a single into a triple. But ultimately, it didn't really matter because the Marlins only scored 1 more run the rest of the game. And in between that, the Dodgers scored they didn't in between. They didn't score 15. They scored, 11 in between that, and then 4 more after that. So, yeah, it was exactly what the Dodgers needed. It was exactly what they needed to kind of settle themselves back. That 16-0 loss to the Cubs, really mess with run differential. But getting, 12 runs back in this game will definitely help that run differential and kind of settle things down a little bit. The Giants lost, so the Dodgers are now in sole possession of first place in the NL West. If you're worried about that, they're 1 game behind the best record in all of baseball, with the Mets being 1 game ahead there. And, it's starting to look better. When we talked about the Rockies series, and even though it was a sweep, it wasn't necessarily like the prettiest sweep. It was one of those where they kind of got it done, and that's basically how Monday felt in this series, because they were up 5-0 and then they were tied 5-5, and then they had to go to extra innings, and it was a win but not a pretty win. And this one was pretty enough for the both of them. It was one of those games where you get to smile a lot. We got to see Kike Hernandez pitch the 9th inning. We got to see him debut. I don't know. I guess that's something that pitchers can use. It was a helmet with the top cut off, so basically like a helmet visor, and he was wearing it out there. He forgot to cover first base on the ground ball to first base with first baseman Austin Barnes, which was another little quirk of this game. But ultimately, it was a game where I think if you listen to the Sportsnet LA broadcast, you realize, this game was fun, because there was a lot of giggles and laughing going on between Steven Nelson and Eric Karros and Dave Vassay. So, it's the Dodgers have an early game on Wednesday. This could all get flushed away with an annoying loss on a Wednesday. But for now, this is exactly what they needed. They set themselves up. They got pretty much a full rested bullpen going after Gonsolin tomorrow. They have the day off on Thursday. And then, you have Yamamoto and Roki on Friday and Saturday, who have been giving some length, at least Roki the last few times out, Yamamoto the whole entire season. So you set yourself back up. And that's the biggest part of this, is just getting yourself ready for the next game. And if the Dodgers were in a close game, would have had to use, multiple arms, and you're really counting on Tony Gonsolin in his first start in a long time, to give you a little bit of length. You might have had to push him a little bit, if he was struggling to kind of wear it. But now you don't have to worry about that. If Gonsolin gives you 5 innings, that's great. If he only gives you 4 innings, that's okay. And if he gives you anything less than that, not ideal, but they have enough arm coverage to get through the rest of the game. And hopefully the offense can continue to stay hot. We're going to talk about Andy Pajes in the last segment, but I do want to give some love to Teoscar Hernandez, who is now the MLB RBI leader after 4 RBIs tonight. He didn't get the home run to keep his home run streak going, but he's been on fire the last week. He's been good the entire season, but the last week he's hitting over 400, 4 homers, 14 RBIs in the last 7 games. Like, that's production in the middle of the order that the Dodgers need, especially in the. I guess Ohtani's been hitting now for almost 7 games, but putting the run when he comes up with runners on, you have a good feeling about it, and he's been getting it done there. And only 4 strikeouts in those last 7 games, so that's a big part of that. When you're putting the ball in play and hitting it as hard as Teo does, that's a good sign. So all in all, it was a fun night at the Ravine, and we're gonna show some love to Matt Sauer in the next segment, because he gave the Dodgers an MVP of the game type performance, and more than they could really ask for in a situation where they were probably a little bit concerned. So we're going to get into Matt Sauer and the rest of the guys that pitched. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. If you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, Dodger tickets, entertainment, more, it's easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you just stop managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. And if you're managing money with the partner, it's smoother than ever with Monarch Money, because you can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without all the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day, probably last listen of the day if you're listening live right now on YouTube, seeing as it is 10:24 p.m. We appreciate those of you here with us right now. We appreciate those of you that listen after the fact we go live. Remember, you can go beyond the podcast, come Locked On Dodgers Insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. Get text directly from us and get invited to our Discord server. And yeah, let's talk about Matt Sauer, because I don't remember if we mentioned his name when we were thinking of arms. I know obviously we talked about Robleski had just pitched, Landon Knack had just pitched, Bobby Miller could have been the guy. Matt Sauer was one of the only other arms they could have called up. So I'm sure we mentioned his name, but maybe not as intently, or maybe not as we should have known and looked into it, because they talked about it during the broadcast when they asked Dave Vassegh, how long can Matt Sauer go, or what can he give the Dodgers today? And he had pitched over a week ago. He had pitched, he started a game for OKC, went about 68 pitches, I think they mentioned, hadn't pitched in a week. So, he was built up and he was going to be ready to go. And it's a lot easier to pitch. The Dodgers put up 3 in the first, 4 in the second. So before Matt Sauer took the mound, the Dodgers were up 4-1. Before he took the mound for a second inning, the Dodgers were up 7-1. And it's a lot easier to just do your job of throwing strikes when you have a 6-run lead ahead of you and you're facing, a team like the Marlins that can score runs but aren't necessarily, built offensively. Sauer did end up pitching, I think it was 78 pitches, struck out 4, 5 hits, 1 run. No big deal there. And we'll see what happens. I don't know. The Dodgers don't have an arm to kind of call up, and they, have enough arms to get through on Wednesday. So they might leave Sauer up until, Friday, and then maybe decide on something else, or keep him around. They as much as, you maybe want to see one of these other young guys, Sauer can come in and throw strikes like that. Obviously, it's not always going to go perfectly the way it did on this night, but it could happen, and, he could provide some real value giving that length. Now, he did throw 78 pitches. He's not necessarily, I don't know if he was built up to that, but he's probably going to need a few days off. But like I said, the Dodgers don't really have a straight reliever to call up. They could call up Robleski or Knack or Miller or Frasso, who they haven't called up yet. But it's not necessarily – I guess, no, he probably will have to go down. Matt Sauer's going to get option for Tony Gonsolin. I completely forgot. They hadn't officially brought up Gonsolin yet. So, yeah, appreciate you, Matt Sauer. You're getting option back to OKC. I'm sure we'll see you back up when time allows, or if somebody else gets hurt. And, hopefully you can bring that value in another game and, continue to do things for the Dodgers and the OKC Comets. So, but beyond that, Jack Dreyer, like I mentioned, went 2 innings, struck out 3, did give up the run. I don't think it was officially given an error to Teo, even though he misplayed the ball out there in right field and, gave up that triple. But, and Luis Garcia gets to throw the 1 inning, and then Kike Hernandez gets to throw the last inning. But I want to talk a little bit about, kind of what Mark Pryor was talking about before the game. He did the pregame little press conference instead of Dave Roberts, and they were kind of asking him about different things, and with the bullpen game and kind of in the spot they are, and he was, this is where they're at, and this is what they had to do, and not ideal. Obviously with Glasnow, we got a little bit of an update there that they don't know what's wrong with him. They don't know what exactly it is. We mentioned the shoulder hurting him. Yesterday they mentioned general soreness, of the body. We know that Glasnow is not wanting this to be the case of not knowing exactly what's going on. But basically they're going to shut him down from throwing for a couple weeks. It feels like they're going to get him back going, see what happens. And, he's probably going to need to go through the bullpen simulated game, rehab game route. It's going to take a while for him to come back. Same with Blake Snell, where he was going to throw and he wouldn't needed a rehab assignment. Now that he's shut down again, he's going to have to throw. Pryor wouldn't commit to, basically kind of a spring training timeline once Snell is back and ready to go or ready to throw. But you would imagine it's going to take at least a couple rehab starts for Snell once he does get going, just because he was early in the season. Then he takes, it's going to end up probably being a month off before he's really throwing again. He's probably going to have to go that route. So the Dodgers, all that to say that the Dodgers may need some bullpen games again. They can't get Kershaw back till May 17th. They could obviously use Mac, Robleski, Bobby Miller, or Matt Sauer when they do need it. Because if they want to keep guys on certain schedules, with the way the schedule is built in May, they're not going to be able to do that with just 5 starters because, guys will have to throw every 5th day, and that's not something they're trying to do. Now, with Yamamoto last year, he was fine getting 5 days off and then throwing on the 6th day. So far this year, he's been getting 6 days off in between and throwing on that 7th day. I would imagine he's still going to be fine on that schedule. Roki, not entirely sure. I would imagine they're comfortable enough to keep him on a schedule of or adjust them to a schedule of you're going to have 5 full days off. You pitch on the 6th day. They're going to kind of have to, or they're going to have to go to some kind of 6-man pseudo rotation, whether it's a for sure rotation or whether it's them just optioning and bringing up guys and, pitching that 6th game every time through the rotation. So there's a lot to kind of look ahead to in the month of May. It's going to be, very contingent, obviously, on Tony Gonsolin being effective and remaining healthy. We'll see him on Wednesday, and it's going to obviously be contingent on everyone else staying healthy. So far, so good on that end, but, you just never know with some of this stuff. And with, Kershaw, he did not pitch on Tuesday. There was bad weather in OKC, I think, where he was at. And they didn't want to risk him, having to throw an inning and then it rains and then, he doesn't get to throw again. So they weren't sure exactly what the plan was. I would imagine he's going to throw the next day available day. But then that would take him off a little bit. He was supposed to throw like Tuesday, Sunday, but now if he throws Wednesday, he can't throw Sunday. Monday, minor league teams have off. So, maybe it's as simple as adjusting it to Wednesday, Tuesday, but we'll see what happens there. But again, he can't come back till May 17th. So they're going to have to go 2.5 weeks, almost 3 weeks with what they have now. And that's just going to have to get through what they do and see what happens. We have a question here about Shohei's next bullpen session. Mark Pryor talked about that. He was going to throw a bullpen, or he's supposed to throw a bullpen on Wednesday, but with the game being at noon, they're not going to have him throw it before the game. They're not going to have him throw it after the game. So they said he might just have a catch day, have a more intense bullpen session on Saturday, and kind of keep building from there. Pryor didn't have a timeline really of when Shohei would be expected to pitch. He's going to keep throwing these bullpens. And then it'll be interesting to see how they get him ready to go. They're not going to have him throw rehab games because he's not going to go down to the minor leagues. So the Dodgers need his bat in the lineup. So I would imagine some simulated games again, but when do you throw that? Like before a game? There's going to be a lot to kind of figure out once they get him going. And, maybe that's a little bit of what the delay is. They're still trying to figure out exactly the best way to build up Shohei Ohtani and get him ready to go. But, I'm more than believing that if it was October right now, Shohei Ohtani could pitch. But the Dodgers are going to slow play it. There's no reason to rush it. Even with the loss of Snell and Glasnow, and even if that means, you have to call up some of these guys that haven't necessarily performed well this season, the Dodgers are still going to take that route rather than rush somebody back, especially considering they're winning right now. And hopefully the offense gets going. If the offense gets going, that's really going to help all this pitching situation because, a lot more 7-1 leads are going to help a lot more guys throw strikes, maybe be more efficient, get deeper in the game, save some of the bullpen arms, ease some of the starters in terms of stressful innings and stressful pitches and, make everyone's life a lot easier. So hopefully the Dodgers do that. They're going to face the Marlins on Wednesday. They're going to face the Marlins again after the Braves series. And, we'll hopefully be on the other side of some of these offensive struggles if we're not already on that side now. So All right, I said I was going to talk about Andy Pages. I'm also going to talk about Mookie Betts a little bit, and we'll mention Michael Conforto and Max Muncy, but I don't know how much there is to say about those guys. But either way, we're going to talk about all that, so make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. If you're looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious, crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I'm a shells guy. I got this bag right here. I just actually had to re-up bags because I finished the other bag. But you give me some shells, you give me some work to do before I get into my pistachios, and I'm a happy guy. But if you are not a shell guy, they have no shells. If you are a guy that wants different flavors other than roasted and salted, they have those different flavors. If you're a guy that wants a smaller pack on the go, they have smaller packs on the go. They have bigger bags if you want. Pretty much anything you could want out of a pistachio. Wonderful Pistachios got you covered. And remember, it's a complete protein providing all 9 essential amino acids. Satisfying crack opening of each shell. It's like a little meditation, especially if you're watching it during the Dodger game. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. I want to thank you for being an everydayer. If you are one, an everydayer is just someone that listens or watches every day. Make sure to do that and make it easier by subscribing. You get notified when episodes are ready or when we're going live on YouTube. If this is your first time listening or watching, welcome. You can become an everydayer just by sticking around and coming back every single day to be with us. Usually it's me and Jeff Snyder, but Jeff's out tonight. So, sometimes it's even better when there's 2 guys talking about the Dodgers. So make sure to go check that out. And remember, you go beyond the podcast and Locked On Dodgers Insider by going to junkiesubtext.com/Locked On Dodgers. Get text directly from us, keeping up to date with the Dodgers, and join our Discord server. All right, let's talk about Mookie Betts a little bit first. Now, Mookie ended up picking up a couple hits in this game, a little broken bat, or I don't know if it's a broken bat, but a little barrel drove, rated single that brought in a couple runs. He hit the ball a little harder later in the game. He's been in a weird spot. Overall in the season, his OPS is just at 718, but he has been better of late. That doesn't necessarily mean he's been good because he hasn't really been good. You look at the last 2 weeks, he's hitting 186 with an OPS under or just under 600. You look at the last 7 games, he's hitting 233, but the OPS is still under 600. So, yeah, what's wrong with Mookie Betts? Now, he's picked up hits in the last 3 games, but just, 1 for 4, 1 for 5, and then the 2 for 4. I'm not worried about him in the long term. In the short term, it's one of those where, I don't know. He looks visibly frustrated. It's not ideal especially when Shohei starts hitting. Freddie's been hitting. Teo's been hitting. Especially in games like this where everyone's been hitting, and you get a 2 RBI single, but you could still tell he was unhappy with it because it was a little busted ball single into shallow outfield. But there's a lot of people, maybe not a lot of people, but there was questions before of playing a new position, how hurts him offensively. Last year he played a new position and he started off really hot with the bat. And ultimately I don't think that he's doing the same amount of work he was doing last year as he was this year. We don't even really think about him at shortstop anymore. He's been making all the plays. He's been pretty solid there defensively. I know there was one throw that Freddie had to make a good play on in this game, but for the most part, he's been hitting Freddie in the chest a lot. He's been making all the plays. So, with Mookie, I don't know. I don't think it's a matter of Mookie Betts just can't hit anymore. I think it's just a matter of Mookie Betts isn't hitting right now. It's last year when he was struggling, maybe the Dodgers have to bring back Brent Honeywell to throw him some batting practice because, they talked about that being something he did in the postseason, and he was taking all those extra swings and, everything else. And you look at Mookie, and he's still elite in some areas and just, not as elite in some other areas, and not necessarily something, squared up percentage. He's in the 99th percentile. Chase percentage, he's still not chasing really. He's still not swinging and missing really. He's still not striking out really. His walk percentage is up there, but he is pretty bad in the rest of things. He's not barreling up a lot. He's not hitting the ball hard a lot. His bat speed is down in the 6th percentile. Expected batting average, expected slugging, all that is down for him. Again, the fact of the matter is that he's still seeing the ball well. He's just not making good contact when he does swing at good pitches. So I'm not worried about Mookie Betts. If we're sitting here in 2 months and Mookie Betts is still OPSing around 700 or below, I will have a little bit of worry, and we'll have to get deeper into the numbers if we get to that point. But we're not there yet. And it's one of those where maybe he's going to go take 400 swings in the cage, and then he'll come back, one of the next games and go 4 for 5 and hit the ball, 100 miles an hour a few times. And then we'll be like, okay, Mookie looks back to normal. But it's not for sure. And it's too early to be worried, because there still are some good underlying numbers. There are also some underlying numbers that could be worrisome if it continues on this way. So we'll see. But let's talk about Andy Pages. Andy Pages, he's been the man. I mean, he won or co-won Player of the Week with Eugenio Suarez, and then he's continued on. He got picked up 3 hits, a couple RBIs, a home run. Yes, the home run was off a position player, but the position player got other people out and didn't get him out. And now you look at Andy Pages, and he's hitting 293. His OPS is over 900. He's got 6 homers. He's been astronomically hot the last week, really, really hot the last 2 weeks. It doesn't look like something is a short-term thing. Now Pages could, shown himself to be a streaky hitter. This is the highest of highs, the hottest of hot. But, he's cut the strikeouts. And that's a big part of it, of, why you can think this is sustainable. He has just 2 strikeouts in the last 7 games, and then just 10 strikeouts in his last 55 at-bats. So, that's not as good as 2 strikeouts in his last 7 games, but it's still pretty good overall. And, he's been hitting them to the opposite field. He's been pulling the ball. He's been doing different things. And they talked about during the broadcast, not just the offensive side, but the defensive side, the base running side. This is a guy that wants to be better, that wants to work, and, maybe is just as upset with himself as we were when he was, making those defensive mistakes, making those base running mistakes, and not hitting when the season started. They mentioned that he's the first one on the field, or one of the first ones on the field for outfield drills, working with Dino Ebel. Dino Ebel had asked him to kind of stay out there and work on his base running during batting practice. He's been doing that without having to be told, which, sounds like something that, yeah, he's a major leaguer, he should be doing that. But, not every guy has the work ethic or wants to put in the work to be better. And it seems like Pages is doing it, and he's getting rewarded with it right now. He's been on fire. I would imagine, we saw Conforto bat 9th in this game. We saw Pages bat 8th. I don't know if they want to, move Pages up too much. Obviously Max Muncy's struggling, but with Ohtani, Betts, Freddie, Teo, Will Smith, Tommy Edman, like the first 5 spots are pretty good. If you move up Pages too much, maybe he doesn't get the opportunities to be on base for Shohei Ohtani and stuff like that. So I think he's in a good spot right now. But is he going to hit, 500 the rest of the season? Probably not. But if he can keep it, an OPS of 850 and above with improved defense in center field, or at least not bad defense, keep the base running mistakes to a bare minimum, that's a guy that'll play. That's a guy that makes a lot of sense. And that's a guy that kind of makes the future of this season for sure a little bit more clear. Because if Pages continue to struggle, Conforto is struggling, and, you're Andrew Friedman, and it's, June 25th, you're thinking, I might need to go get 2 outfielders for this team, because, I don't know what we're doing. And if they haven't, Ha-Seong Kim, while he's had better success in the minors, it's not necessarily jaw-dropping numbers, especially for an offensive league like they have over there in the PCL. Eddie Rosario's gone. He's on the Braves now. And then some of the other guys are just either not ready. Rushing's not going to play outfield. At least that's what they've said. So there's not necessarily something down there to just go and grab for outfield. Obviously Edman can play outfield, but then you're taking away from the infield. Alex Freeland could come up and maybe play one of those infield spots. But again, he's unproven as well. So, but Pages solidifies a spot to where, okay, he can move to left field if we get a center fielder. He can stay in center field if we go get a corner outfielder, or, we feel comfortable with him at the very least in a platoon role. Like, these last few weeks has really changed the outlook on the, Pages, obviously, and on the Dodgers. Like, Pages was probably, a few weeks from being sent down, or at least, thought about being sent down. Fans were already trying to send him down, but, now he looks like a guy that could be in play for the Dodgers for the rest of the season. And it's not like it's out of nowhere. He had some struggles last year on and off with the bat and defensively and with base running, but ultimately, like, he continued to hit left-handers throughout pretty much the whole season. So at the very least, like, that's the bare minimum set for Pages. And, a guy that works hard, a young player that works hard. We know they've talked about his relationship with Teoscar Hernandez and, Teo kind of helping him stay in the present, stay in the mode and get ready to go. It's just great to see when all that, work pays off. And it's not to say that these other guys aren't working hard or, the Dodgers, anything like that. But, for a guy, when you do work hard and it does pay off, it is nice to see. And when the form of Andy Pages, it's been great to see. And I hope he continues to keep on tearing it up. And who knows, maybe makes a surprise All-Star appearance. I don't know. But that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. Make sure to find us wherever you have podcasts and on YouTube. Make sure to be coming every day or by listening or watching every day. Make sure to check out Locked On MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB YouTube or wherever you get podcasts, get local analysis for all the games. So make sure to check that out. Go beyond the podcast, come Locked On Dodgers Insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. You can email us, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or you can send us a voicemail or a text message at 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us when you get in your car or if you're at home. Text my device, play podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.